So the question is, what's that do a clue? So if I look up the word clue, the original sense was a ball of thread, once used to guide a person out of a labyrinth. So it could be daaduneiyi, but that's so long. The way a person untangles what they don't know. Daaduneiyi. Yeah.
Could you put it in the chat? Could you put it in the chat about untangling?
So we can maybe build it up from there. The question was, what would we call a clue?
Am I on mute?
No.
Roxani Keek.
Maybe it'll be a L class. Daaduneiyi.
Good.
Okay. So to get us prepared, Tlingit aya niadesh shaksatani awahagawu. So I'd like us to speak for a bit in Tlingit to get us ready. We'll use a little bit of English. I think we had a suggestion, probably from me, to talk about the flood and maybe clan migrations today. And then Wednesday, we're talking about scary things or like unknown things. I think that's what I recall. So that's for the conversation parts. Just do your best. And then for the lessons, we'll probably just untangle some grammar stuff today. The purposive, which I think we should have cheech in there somewhere, just for a cheeky joke. And then there's probably perfective in future. And then I'm going to start putting together a presentation on the negative perfective. But we can look at a little bit of negation. The biggest thing is when you take the I out of the classifier. And I'll show you folks why that changes things quite a bit. So I thought that's what we'd do this week, what we'd do. I'm also going to be sending out, well, I guess the negotiations are open right now for midterm and final assignments, which I think should be translation work. Your midterm, you'll go from Tlingit to English. And then for your final, you go from English to Tlingit, maybe. Or maybe you'll just give a Tlingit performance. I don't know. So I've got my hands on a Swanton piece, The Origin of Copper. So I'll give you the major hint. And so I'm going to send it out to you folks tonight. You'll see the column on the left has the Tlingit for you, and your job is to fill in the right-hand side between now and we'll just give it a while, and then we'll just start going through it line by line. So I like to give midterms, but then we all end up doing it together. Don't go find the answers. They might be out there, but that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get there yourself. Any questions or things that might help you to get ready for our conversations?
Also do a song to sneeze. To
sneeze. Is it I always get that one and snore confused for some reason. Let me find it. So like if it's happening right now, al-sikha is they are sneezing right now. It's got an A theme, so the A is always there. Most of the body functions are all A themed. Peeing, pooping, farting, burping, sneezing. They all have the A just locked in there. So al-sikha, here's the theme. Oh, let me give you folks the theme. And then oh, whoops, okay. Hold on, I gotta adjust a couple things. It's ikha. That's where it is. It's ikha. So there's the theme. Let me go ahead and do that one more time. So I gotta add one thing to the theme and then tell me how this changes it. Let me find it. Oops. Gotta find something. There it is. Okay, there. I had to add that. It's kind of small in the chat. So, what did I add and what does that mean? If you could see it. Yeah, so that little symbol got added after the tz'icha.
Invariable.
It's invariable, so it will be tz'icha every single time. So that when you see that little X, that means the stem never changes, because the stem should be going long and short and low and high, right? Usually you're gonna have three options. It can be short and high, long and high, long and low. Those are your three typical options for the stem. They're predictable, but when you get that little cross after it, it means it won't change. Now, if you look in, this has adapted a little bit from the way that the theme was recorded years ago. So years ago, you would see things with the root and then maybe this little tilde after it. What that little tilde meant was that the stem is variable. It will change. But talking with Zeosh and Seth Cable, they said, they all change. There's only a few of them that don't. So let's just mark the ones that don't change. So we kind of reversed course on that a little bit. So if we have, it's the A theme, so the A has to always be there. There's the subject marker. It's going to be a D plus L classifier. And then tsecha. How would you say, I sneezed?
One,
Ah,
why is there a pinch after the I?
is it after the I? Oh, that's a typo. Sorry, it should be after the S. Let me change it again.
I couldn't get that.
Sorry. It's so small, I can't see it. There. Tsecha. So we're looking for I sneezed. If you just add the A to the front, then you'll have it. But when you add the A to the front, that is going to cause the second A and the hua to drop out. So we're going to have auch dle tzicha. Auch dle tzicha. And you might say shagaudain auch dle tzicha. I sneezed loudly. What about I am going to sneeze?
You're going to add a pinch, no, an underline K somewhere.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So, except that classifier has to change. It's the only thing that needs to change there. So when you have gle in the perfective, what should you have in the future?
La.
Just the L.
Just the
Yep. I'm gonna sneeze. Yeah, wow. Okay. Okay, so now what we're going to talk about after our conversation today is how to, the future is highly predictable. The perfective is highly predictable. There's quite a few variables that just pop up in there. And it's mostly just really getting a handle on the classifier and then how those things look when they start smashing into each other. Okay, any other questions?
Annie, I have a question.
Uh,
So invariable roots, if they're high, when you put that verb into a complement clause or relational clause, does that invariable root stay high before you add the I or the YI?
yeah, it shouldn't change. And so sometimes, sometimes we'll see in like the attributive especially, there's some interesting things that go on. Like sometimes everything just gets flattened out. But if it can't go low, it usually won't go low, right? If it can't go low. So if there's a couple things when you look at the verb theme. If the verb root is marked as high, then the stem will not go low, right? So like shocked, it always has to be high. It cannot go low. The other thing is if it has that little X after it, it shouldn't ever change, right? And so sometimes when you put the relational marker or the attributive marker at the end of a verb, that'll push the stem to, sometimes it'll just go low, right? But then in this case, it won't, right? So you could say, "Achtu yike ichsachani," and so that it just has to stay the same. Ah.
So here's a real technical question. So after you sneeze, what do you say? Is it gunachsa or something like that?
When someone sneezes, I was taught you say gunachsa. And then where did it come through? And tzatnach is supposed to be lucky. But I don't know. I was just told that by Johnny Marks, and he would just laugh. But I always sneeze out my mouth just because I'm worried about projectiles. Okay, that was a good follow-up question.
What's a quarantine?
That's a
What's a quarantine?
Quarantine? Oh, okay, yeah. Shoot, I feel like we came up with a name. Wasn't it daaduneiyi? Was it that? Or there was wooshdach? I remember, I thought the Yukon Native Language Center put out some stuff too. It's just like daaduneiyi or something like that. Just sit in your house.
I think Ruth had something on Facebook, and I think she called it hunker down.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember what word she used.
Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I'll see if I can find it. Is people aren't going to go among other people. People are going to, oh yeah. Quan, I think I heard that as well, that there was some relationship between Quan and quarantine. Is people are going to sit inside their house, sit in the house, I guess, the house. Okay. Okay. Anything else? We're going to have lessons after this. So we're going to move into our conversation. So the suggested topic, which we can drift away from, is the Great Flood, clan migrations. I think it's fun stuff to talk about, but it might challenge us because we'll see. And then Wednesday, we are talking about, so I like to start our class with I like to talk about just sort of what kinds of things are going to get us ready. So Wednesday, we'll talk about supernatural, the unknown, maybe the scary. And then when we move into our lessons, we'll be doing some grammar stuff. Anybody want to start us off? And then we're going to switch over to Tlingit. We'll probably go about half an hour. We'll see how it feels, and then we'll switch over. So if you don't understand what somebody says for any reason, we'll just keep the conversation going. So we're not going to break into English. Feel free to take notes about stuff that you hear or stuff that you wish you knew how to say, and we'll try to help you to say those things.
I thought we were supposed to do animal riddles for water animals.
Was that what we're doing today?
I thought, but
Okay.
Remember, you said we were going to do whatever you want, though.
It's in the syllabus. Okay, so you guys want to do the water animals first? Did you guys do some of those? Okay, let's do those. Okay, so today, so what we did on Wednesday, which apparently I forgot what we're supposed to do today, we're gonna just sort of name, we're gonna give 5 descriptive sentences about a water animal. And the goal is to make it kind of challenging to figure out what we're talking about. So if it has some sort of defining characteristic, like a large dorsal fin or something like that, then you want to hold those for like sentence number 5 or 4. And as you read your sentences, which we'll share in an email group, or group email, or feel free to post them in the chat if you want to, if you have that capability. And then as you go with each sentence, we're going to try to guess what it is you're talking about. Okay, so let's try this. And then try not to use English. This is, again, it's just games and devices to push us into the language. Then maybe we'll try the flood. I can't.
ideas, too many.
Yeah, well, what's cheese. I decided to ask you to aich sati.
Once you turn it off, no. Turned off, it's old.
Achti.
Yachid kwaku tleichandit katagu. Yachid kwaku tleichandit katagu.
Gook.
Agwacha na ka tagasa.
It's an octopus.
Ka tagasa.
Patuk again?
Rasa? Right. Datawu wayeti. You datawu wayeti yech kajab. Kajab. Datawu wayeti yech kajab.
Khateka. Took.
The Tesla Atka.
Yaga.
Like.
Ik. Nak katakatsa ake awacha. Yisiku ke dasawe.
Nanyai at Uhenia we.
Oh. Kitaga.
Like.
Talk again.
What's that?
Talk again.
Like.
Teach again?
Oh.
Hoot.
An. Kaan.
Like one Ghanaians Japan at Hun Aka Tlingit Ani Ade. If I'm saying it right, I don't know.
Mm.
One Ghanaians Japan at Hun Aka Tlingit Ani Ade.
Oh, oh. Atuski ko. Katkuga. How? Takshidzi. Tashtasa. Oh, okay. Wasahagi at lock. Sheesh. Atusatsu.
Akwan Shayadahin.
Staccato again.
Okay, so Guk Ashtakat Kwan Shaklagay Yay Haydukai Haydukai Gay Ashtakat Kwan Shaklagay Yay Haydukai.
You do.
Never gonna guess. Wanganines Yaklain nach Tlak Kwahu.
Oh, not playing.
Yaklain. Yaklain.
Tustin Nakwaga.
Okay. Honey, city. Kuat, fresh cheech yati.
Tuyanaka.
Heat, ach, honey, city. Kuat, fresh cheech yati.
Khataga.
Like, this multimedia.
Oh.
Kai.
Yanaka?
Yai again.
Sorry.
Yai again.
Like,
Oh.
Han ye ach age. No, don't look at it.
We're listening, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, con.
Ah.
Oh, okay.
Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay, Johan. Lidzi. Ade kaishkitia. Okay.
I'll go. Like yan uwatla wududzitin. Yan uwatla wududzitin. Kunach okdech. Kunach achkayak e. Sa iche gachtut. Sa iche gachtut. Kunach achkayak e. Chat a chanut. Chat a chanut. Dog on. Tut ka sheikh yachyati awa. Tut ka sheikh yachyati awa.
Teach. Awe, akwe.
Sasa?
Teach.
Like.
Heat.
Nazca. Okay, Kajin. Nazca du shu nuch du ji wu. Nazca du shu nuch du ji wu.
Shao again? Okay, how? Okay, ha. With the kachi away. A dichi. Gonna cheese. Okay, ha. A disatsu kakwa up.
Kataya, before I lose my nerve. Achawu dujit. I'm already thinking that's wrong. Achawu dujit. Nasjin kat kakejin tauk ye kudsati. What? Maybe. Shaklage ya dujit. Ye chat achanuch.
Heat.
Kaslatzin a ichi Tlingit yes.
The
last one? Kaslatzin a ichi Tlingit yes.
Heat. Heat. Okay. Agwe.
Kasadudak. So again.
Do.
Okay, good cheese. Yeah.
It's fun. Kausigu.
Yeah, one. Atisatsi dituasaku kaya ako. We hintak.ádi daaduneiyi kagachtu'at. Aka away kagachtu'ak away dasawe adatu khiyatani. Yatatsu. Gwalla itcha. Gwalla naskegi. Gwalla ETA sandiqak. Ya akhiyatki hastu shkuni. Zoom tunach aya hasakawa akkoa. Khatkhiyawuz. Khatkanawuz. Just gwalltaik khatawuzi. Aka akhtuwasagu kaya aku. Khan kananik dasawe we cook too. Dasawe adat you tichtatan. Wait, that's
At least they were nose to nose and there was no
Tukka. Nada inch a you yak Hiyat awe a kuwu ka a hidiye. Tuch yach yati. Tau adaye yati. Ya gasht at lich. Ya gasht at ch.
Chwech. The chwech.
Trek. Kachanetsaga. Trek.
No. Get away from there. No.
Yuk aga.
Yay away.
Woo.
You.
Knachik eh.
Okay, let me just rip the band-aid off and chad ade yechat naiu. I tried really hard, but I don't think that most of these are right. But here goes. Shich kustin aya. Dech tleka ka gushuk tak shich katagu. Nask tuj ka dle yakyati. Dachun alzik diki dusich. Shich. And Kajin ek dak yukyati.
Wasa yitu chuhan. Kitaga.
I'm cooking.
Would it help if I just tried to say what I meant to say in English? What I was trying to say in Tlingit?
Like kagachto ak. Kitaga.
Ah.
Gwashre trophy ach jiwu ya idat. Ya du would lache at. Good cheese, hook echa.
Chataga. Chatayach one line. In kanach dak kakwanik. Okay. Ye kwadzige. Ye kwadzige. Yewa? There. Nakik ye yatitso. Nakik ye yatitso. Oh, like eight kachu hintak yeti. Dliyat so. Oh, dliyat so. ach, oh, ach jiwo sha yawag ka dal. Sha yawag ka dal. Ach, Tlingit, enach. Kunach etsk aya.
Ah.
Hintak kate taidek yechatiati. Hintak kate taidek. I made that one up. Yechatiati.
Sa age.
Like,
Sao age.
ach jiwu tlang atawu.
Awuga? Oh.
Ah,
Ah.
Yekwadzige. So,
Huh.
let's get the show clues.
You got to block again.
Chwash age.
Like,
Achge.
what? Dasa?
Ach.
Dasa. Like,
Ah.
Knock again?
like, eight. Hintak yeyati. Nakik. They're from the northern region. Tliyat. Tliyat. Achjiwu clank atawu. Like a fan. I don't know what a fan would look like. Hintak kate taidek. Taidek. Yechatiati. I live under rocks. How would you say that? Taidek?
Tetayik.
Oh, tetayik.
Oh. How? Okay. What's that do so good? Has to say kakakwashi. Kluch, that's so it kluch.
Wech.
Wech, the gesai.
Both.
Yet go was a coup. Just the cut heart a ya has to kaya nach shakle away wech. Clay the hin koi yesh aus the teen. Wasa ach to was a good kahwa akhai. Yesh a kawa akawe our shot. Kunachawe koa. Kaushachig. Kakesh ate away. Ken kashati, yeah. At your way, ya ye that chu ya ho kunachawe with the goat.
Oh.
Chay cooking kashak shakay that.
It was scary. Gonna chase.
Hey, how? Heka.
Yawat lakwa
Kawech. Okay. Ah.
Chat. Question.
Jeez.
Okay. Clusi, tlell ulsi, ya yagi. Chagudach, wait, tlell kushatini ka, eat woodishi yitch. Dech, sate, ye ana h. Nuts, do walk on yach dach kasati.
Janu?
Click. Nada kinch ka at jinda h. Do yaki, do dik a cut at anasnukch. Gedein do ach, do gachi hin kach.
Quahuasaku. Actuasaku chakuku hasakawa akukua. Yisakuksha.
Could eat again?
Ah, a yakawe. Yak e.
Kanashiti a walk. Echa. Gonna cheese.
An yachitu do waka.
Oh yeah, what? How? A katratsew kak kakshihiti, kakwa akwa we Cajun, you katank aya yi ide kakwanik, yata dot, tuchtatan. Eat, aya, you do a sock, ya a nasi. Eat, aya yena teach. Decha. Adasa atuasagu achai, shkak kulsek. Adasa atuasagu achai, shkak kulsek. Nask. Wash. Agachtu steich. We a steichi. Nach in a kakukwashi. We nach koa. An yuch akwatan. Ikadeja gachtagut. Ikadeja gachtagut. Ego ayachwan. Chika haskutsati aya. Ya wushtache uti wushtakan aya. Like wushtakatan. Wushtakatan nawa has to walk. A iti chishugu aya. Wushkan kaya has to walk.
Datel.
Aye awa.
That.
Chalk?
Eat. You do a sock with guksa has cool. Gonna cheese. Okay.
Click Antarctica, ka Iceland, Clill has ku. Dech you ich hini Clill has to tua ushku.
Eat.
Neska uch ka kugos yachyati. Dakun hastu tuasagu hintayi kinda tupen hintak.ádi satiyi. Kijin. Hastu tla has ka sheyi ka tudach al tlech.
Oh, no.
Tēnā kawe huchi ai.
Hastu tla has ka sheyi ka tudach al tlech.
Ingwinaka.
Okay. Yanaka?
Ingwinaka.
Dasa? Tlech. Dakun hastu tuasagu hintayi kinda tuchen hintak.ádi sati. Kijin hastu tla has ka sheyi ka tudach al tlech.
Yishaka?
Tlech.
Oh.
Hastu tuasagu hintayi kinda tuchen. Tlach stinky.
Oh. Ways again?
Cake. Tlach hastu tla hastu tuasagu ka sheyi.
Hagage?
Aata kayatki.
Oh, hintak. Yeah, yes, in the teach. Huh. Way.
See, Jeff Lear has a word for those little things. He calls them hintak kanas ki.
Oh, like little spiders? Hintayishi is we swanton shkashnika dachaya, just yuchaya, watu. Heshwatu sakut das away. We swanton kukusani ko what zeo shaya wadlak. Ya, great kach inach sunstar, you do a sako at when means chart ka awa at this kinde away would the kachtu yik. Klein aya has to ek. Kets ach ko akol hintayishi. Yak How? Kausagu, Johan. Okay, gonna cheesh. Okay, so Wednesday we'll try flood, migrations, and supernatural things. And then maybe Monday, so we've been sort of doing these categories and describing it. But I was thinking my kids do this thing in school every day where they got to answer, you'll think of something, and then we've got to figure out what it is by asking you yes or no questions. I think we should try that one and see how it works. But do we want to have categories? Because theirs is like something that can fit in a box. Because it can't be just everything in the universe. Although I guess theoretically you can get there in what, 20 questions? Or there's some kind of game like that. What would the category be? Birds? Is that too narrow?
Things that live in the mountains.
Okay, mountain things. But this time you're not going to describe it, but we're going to ask you yes or no questions. So that will be Monday, and then Wednesday we'll do just talking about the flood, migrations, and the supernatural. Those are broad categories, just for like a conversation. So I think the games are great. So maybe we'll just try alternating. Monday game day, Wednesday conversation day. See how it goes. Sprinkle in some lessons. Okay, that was really fun. Some of those were really challenging. Those are really good ones. If you can, I want to make sure everybody's on the email thread. Just so we can send all our clues out so we could look at them. Sometime I don't know if I'll provide feedback. If you want feedback, maybe ask for it and I'll try and give it to you. Sometimes it's good to just let it go free flowing, but sometimes it's good to just sort of say, here's a couple things you might think about. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we'll take a look at those. And then the second edition of How Saneh Chayu Chatangi is out. You get it on Amazon. I try to get it as cheap as I could, but it's a lot of colored pages. If you want just the PDF, you can always get it for free. So there's no markup on it. It's just the cost of production. But so let's take a look at. I know we started doing this at some point in the MOOC, but not everybody was there all the time. Just like how you put together perfective verbs, and then how you put together the future. And so when we talk about this stuff, I kind of like to have lots of different approaches to how I look at the different components that go into a Tlingit verb. And so for some of us who've been doing this for a while, we'll just throw these terms like stem and root and classifier and all this stuff, we're just throwing them all around. But just thinking of, they always go in a specific order. Sometimes when they encounter each other, one's gonna jump over the other, but it becomes pretty predictable. Sometimes I think of these things as a bunch of on-off switches on a big switchboard. And you don't have to turn them on, but you can turn them on. And so these four switches right here is everything that's gonna put the verb into a different mode. And then you might add a suffix, but that's gonna be pretty rare when you look at all the different verb modes. So when we have the perfective, we turn this marker on. It's called the perfective marker. And we say perfective instead of past tense because we're not talking about time. What we're doing is we say, when we turn that perfective marker on, we're just talking about the verb in terms of whether it has happened or not. It's a logical sort of a thing, because I can use perfective verbs that are totally present tense things. Like you have to say, chwasaku. The perfective marker has to be in there. I have to say, ichsatin. The perfective marker has to be in there, even if it's happening right now. And so Tlingit doesn't change its verbs for time. It changes it for event. And so there's a logical structure to the event. Just walking through, there are some other knobs up here. You might have something that needs to be there in the preverb. Ye or ke or ya are some of the really common things. It's predictable which one it's going to be and when it needs to pop up there. Whoosh or wooch, if those pop up right before the verb. Oh yeah, I got to put this switch on I'll talk to Jeff Bezos about this switch. Usually it depends. I mostly hear people say one qanins, and then they'll put the verb into a habitual form. One qanins ye teach. Sometimes it's always that way. That seems to be like the way you'd say usually. And like we heard Walter Sobolov say, one qanins qo'a an ketan you had to a saknuch. So we're chinedi, but sometimes people always call us an ketan. So it's a maybe, sometimes always is how Tlingit often takes care of that, usually. So if you put whoosh or wooch right before the verb, that means to do the verb to each other. as opposed to wuching and wooch tin. Those are different things. The plural is next, the hus, which sometimes is just the letter S if there's a vowel before it. The object pronoun, then you're gonna have, you could have up to 3 thematic prefixes. So these are basically nouns that go on to verbs and change their meaning. And once you turn one of these switches, one of these thematics, it's a whole different verb. The ga can pop up in there to do it for yourself. Although sometimes the cooking one, it doesn't always mean I'm cooking for myself. Sometimes that could mean I'm cooking it so we could eat it right away. Then you get into your conjugations. So you have 3 spots where things can be, or 4 spots, sorry. And we're gonna talk about what those things are. I do think they have meaning, but I do think sometimes they really just, it's a certain combination. This plus this plus this. You wanna do a future, you're gonna have to have this ga, this irialis, and this qa every time. Ga, qa. Every time you're gonna have to have that in the future. You wanna do the perfective, you just turn this perfective on. These other ones don't need to be activated. Then you're gonna have a subject marker, who's doing it. The object is who it's happening to. Sometimes an object is used for the subject, usually in plural motion verbs. Then you have a classifier group. You have 4 groups, 0, S, L, SH. They have function. 0 is just the default. S and L have one of 2 typical things. One is it's gonna switch to one of those to say it's not happening, it's not just happening, somebody's making it happen. So for example, you'd say, yak a, it's good. Yishlik a, you made it better. Yanik, she or he is sick. Yisinik, you got them sick. The other times they'll switch just to, sometimes they'll switch to an S because it's a specific type of thing. You're not just being, you're being kagwantan. You're being Tlingit. You're being a teacher. That's why it's the S group. Or I'm not just seeing something, I'm seeing you, a specific thing. The L, it'll switch to the L sometimes when something has something. The weather is, it has clouds. Shekuku kutas, or shekuku's it's a hat that has ears. Jinni, it doesn't have arms. The SH is a group there's not very many verbs there. They seem to be things that people kind of don't want. Then there's 2 things you can activate in a classifier. And I like to think of them, they're just off, but you could turn them off. One is the D component. You can add the D sound in there. That means the subject is also the object. So maybe they're doing something to themselves. They're doing something that affects them. Or it's just kind of got this middle voice, like jumping. It's just something that has that middle voice. Or it has an object and you kick the object out of there. So that's why you'd say awaka for she or he sewed it, and wudaka, she or he sewed. So you've booted the object out of there. Then the I component, it turns to plus I if we're talking about the verb has happened. Okay, so that's what all those different things do. And then there's a lot of things, but there's also only so many things. They activate in certain combinations. This is how you build the prefix and the preverb. Another way to think about this is just through some different illustrations. Here's the order, same order of things, but now they're little blocks, or you think of it as a tree. We're trying all kinds of different things to try and think about how I think about it and how I can explain it. So on here, you have a verb root, And so the root is like the root of a tree. And then there's these little pieces of grass next to it. Does that zoom in when I do that? Okay. So within that piece, this is stem variation. So within the root, the vowel might change. Long and high, short, long and low, short and high. Those are your three options. And then going through, the subject is who's doing it. The classifier, it could have plus I or plus D. The conjugation, so this is, does it happen, did happen, didn't happen, is happening, isn't happening, will happen, won't happen, and a whole bunch more that are just similar like that. The thematic, you can put something onto that verb like a head or a finger or the head of a finger. It could be round. The object, who it's happening to, stuff in the preverb, which is usually going to affect either motion or meaning or modifying. Like cluck, cluck could pop up in there. And then the plural, so the has. So when we start thinking about the perfective, there's two things we really look at: the prefix and the stem. The prefix we build by knowing what's in there and then changing who is doing it. Those are the main things that affect it and how that interacts with the classifier. The stem is determined by the conjugation type and then the stem variation, which I'll show you. It's marked in the theme. So when you look up a verb, there's just some information you're going to internalize so that you can put these perfectives together. And some of you, you've done this already. So we'll just go down this thing. And so if we were to think like ka is the stem, ka, 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 and that's the same all the way down. Long and high, there it is. Then in front of it, you get hua, watua, yi, yi, or if you're from Tessin, this would often be ying, awa, hus awa, and wadua. So the key is, once you figure out what some of the things are in this verb, the conjugation type and the classifier, if you found other verbs that were similar, then they would go the same. Huaka, I sewed it. Huata, I slept, right? So then I could change all those kas to tas, and now it's all sleeping, except you can't do plurals, right? So huaka, watuwaka, yi ka, awaka, hus awaka, waduwaka. So we keep in mind, like this is another way to look at the classifier. We've got these 4 different groups. The verb will not change the group. If it changes the group, it's a different verb. Yake and keshushke are 2 different verbs. They are. So you say yake, keshuke. Those are the same verb. It's a negative form of that, good and not good. Keshushke is an opposite. There are a few verbs that have this way, not this way, opposite of that way. So you have lucky, lucky, not lucky, unlucky. Strong, not strong, weak, right? But there's not very many of those. But you'll see it because usually it'll jump to the SH classifier. So if we're talking about positive perfectives, it happened. They're all going to be the plus I versions. So it must be ya, di, si, zi, she, kli, shi, ji. Must be one of those. And when you look at the theme, you'll know which one it has to be. Because the theme will tell you, if it's an S classifier, it has to be si. And so that's why you get ausitin. That's why it's si, right? And so, okay, yishik-a, choshik-a, right? So then here it is. So once you look in that theme. And so again, the theme, when you look it up in the dictionary, it's this kind of long stretch of information that looks like code. And that code is just giving you all the information that you need to conjugate that verb. So by doing stuff like this, you can make a very good guess of what the prefix and the stem are going to be, especially for the perfective. And then the future, even though it's longer, it's has fewer variables than this, so it's a little bit easier. So ya, di, se, zi, hle, gle, sh, or j. That's what it'll be.
So what verb modes are most often plus I?
Well, the perfective state verbs that are imperfective, and then potentials. Those are actually the only ones that are plus I.
Okay.
Everything else is minus I. So that's why I think of plus I almost like a light switch. You have to turn it on to say, we're talking about the verb happening. It happened. Even though the potential is a little weird, because the potential, you could say like, I can't do it, and that needs to be a plus I. So that one's the exception. Okay. So in stem variation, for the perfective, you have open and closed. Okay, so open means it ends with a vowel, closed means it ends with a consonant. Then you also have what we call glottal or ejective. But here's the only thing you got to remember here. Every open stem, the zero conjugation type is going to be long and high. All the others will be long and low. So huacha, that's a zero, and we know it's a zero because when you command someone to do it, cha, there's nothing in front of it. So that will always be high. But I say nata, qanu, qayqih. All of those will be long and low in the perfective. Oops, some of those examples were closed, sorry. Okay, so we'll look at example, as we walk through, I'll show you like when you look at that theme, here's the things you grab out of it. And the perfective is important because this is how you tell stories, right? All these things are going to be perfective verbs. If it's fading, it doesn't matter. Fading means there's a little h at the end. The only thing that fading affects is those repetitive forms. Other than that, the opens are all the same. For closed, all the zeros will be short and high. Everything else will be long and low. The only exception is if in the theme, you see the tone marker in the theme, it cannot go low. Okay? Again, once we look at examples, and once we do enough examples, it starts to make sense. And once we start doing some examples, then we're going to throw thematic prefixes on the top and see how that changes things. So here's some examples. When I look at this, if I say, I want to know how to put this into a perfective, there's a couple things I look for. There's a few things. One, is there an object? Because if there is, you're going to get awa, right? Or aude, or amde, right? And so that's what the object is going to tell you. Whether that third person needs to have the right in the front. The second thing I look for, what is the classifier group? So these ones, it's a zero group. This is going to be ya all the way down. Ya, 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 ya.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Third thing, this is open and it's ga. So it should be long and low. But if you see this little X after it, that means this one is long and low all the time. It doesn't matter. It's always got to be long and low. It can't change. So then looking at that one, we go, what a, to it a, yeet a, yeet a, out a.
To determine where you're going.
A. Would do what a. Okay. But what happened if we look at those hwa, watua, ye, awa, has awa, wadua, and then we go back up to this one, they're the exact same shape. Hwa, watua, ye, awa, has awa, and wadua. So coming back, the next one, because it's a 0 plus d, it has to be di. So it's going to be di all the way down. This is a 0, open, so it's going to be long and high. Ka, 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 ka. There's no object, so the third person is going to be woulda, as opposed to oude or umde. Chwataka, watudaka, yidaka, yidaka, woodaka, haswoodaka, wooduwaka. So a couple things to note here. One of these A's drops out, so it gets a little shorter. That's because it runs into a consonant. This one we mark with those 2 dots over it because sometimes that Y gets absorbed. Sometimes it changes to a W. But in this case, the D, it has to stay the same, or else you couldn't hear what the classifier was. Wutude, that one is mostly the same. Yi also shortens to yide. So this one, we should expect yisaku. Because I'll hear some people say isaku, but that Y has to be on there. It has to be a perfective. This one, it stays, the front of it stays the same, except you have to add the classifier in there. Awa, and this would have been aude if there was an object on there. So that's why you say ausiku, siku, right? So if that perfective marker gets shortened to what on the coast is a W, and there is a vowel right before it, that'll be the M, right? So that's where the M is in Deesleen. And then Wadua. So in the super mega bonus round, here's another rule. When you put the 4th person in there, duh, all 0 group classifiers must be -I. It has to be ya. Even if it's a D classifier, it'll change. It'll change to -D once you put duh in there. If it's a non-zero, S, L, or SH, it must be +D. So this is why you say chasachan with dudzachan, because the du, it has to dudze. It's just this little fun, little funky rule about the 4th person. Everybody okay? Okay.
Like Tsuye Yanaka,
Okay.
do 4th, all 0 groups have to, or 0 classifier groups have to.
They must be -D. You cannot say dude. You cannot dude.
No dude.
And no duse, duje, or dushe. So all the non-zeros with du must go +D. So same thing. You'd say chwasatin, wududzatin. It's got to change to z. Okay.
Is that what Dick and Nora called the doodah rule?
Yes, it's the doodah rule. You can't doodah, you can't do-de. It has to do. And it'll get tricky too, because the +D -I for the non-zeros have no vowel in the classifier. So I would say ye kekwasatin. But I would say ye gachdustin. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just moving through the classifier. So there's a 0. Here's a 0 plus D. Now we're going to look at an S and an S plus D and an L plus D and an SH and an SH plus D. Just so we can look at what what we're really learning here. It's just some new verbs in case we don't know these ones. There's a little bit of discrepancy about whether, because you know you could say akach washi and you could say chwat a. Those are both saying I found it. And this usually says the result of searching, but I actually think it's the other way around. I think chwat a means like I came upon it. Akach washi, because I was looking for it and I found it. But I'm still trying to verify that one. So just know in your mind that that one might change a little bit. Okay. So here we go.
The Yanaka, because those two happenings are very common in my life.
Yes.
Finding things after searching or just coming upon things.
So I think chwat a would mean like I was just walking around and I found it. But I think a kach washi would be I was looking for it and I found it. Because washi means literally like feeling around in a space, right? It's the same like washi would be to touch something. Okay. Next verb, or next set of verbs, right? So again, as we take a look, there's an object. We should expect with this classifier, ause. There it is, ause. And then has ause. That tells us how to put the third person together. It's an S classifier, so we should have si all the way down until we get to the fourth person, who must be zi. It's ka and closed, so it should be long and low all the way down. Teen, 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 teen. So again, there's about 4 things you got to look for, but once you know to look for them, you should now be able to look up any verb and put it into the perfective. Just like that. Poof. Chosatin, watusatin, yisatin, yisatin, ausatin, umsatin, husausatin, husumsatin, bududzatin. Okay, so here's another trick. All those non-zeros, they're going to look exactly the same, but this letter will change. Se to shle to sh, right? Or you're going to have z and gle and j. So it's not really the letter, it's that consonant will be the only thing that changes. So you'll have chwase, chwashe, chwashe, chwadze, chwadle, chwadje. Other than that, it's all going to look exactly the same for that prefix. So again, there's a lot of stuff here to look at, but it becomes so predictable. You learn how to put that together, and then you predict what the stem's going to be. It's a 2-part thing. And once you learn how to do it, and even though like it's really abstract, but once we start walking through the examples, we're like, okay, you could do now, guess what this one's going to be. predict that, and you're going to get it. And then once you see it, you'll see it.
But changing the classifier in each one of those makes it a different verb.
Yes, if you change that classifier, it's a different verb. So if you change the classifier group, or if you add a thematic prefix, that's going to be a different verb. There are others where sometimes if you put specific things in front of it, it conjugates the same, but it's actually different. Like yati is to be. But once you put itinach in front of it, now it's need, right? If you put yanach, it's to overpower. But then it's the same, like you say yekwati, and you could say hinatinach yechatkakwati. I'm gonna need water. Any other questions? So we walk through the logic, and now we're starting to walk through the examples. We're not going to get to the end here, but we'll do a few more of these, right? And so I might not read them all for you. There is a fill in the blank worksheet. Out to gone. That's what we're going to get to. So as soon as we walk through all of these, then you're going to see it, and these will be blank, and you're going to tell me what they are, and we're going to take turns guessing, or we'll just see. If you're comfortable trying it, go for it. Okay. So again, ausse, and then if we just jump ahead. Right, so chosatin, wutusatin, yisatin, yisatin, ausatin, umsatin. I think we did those ones right here. So here, we don't have an object. So I would expect that to be wudze, and it is. It's a D plus S, so it's going to be z all the way down. Z, 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 z. It's a 0, and it's closed, so it should be short and high. Git, 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 git. Right, so those it's following the pattern. So now we're all going to break the law. A gate chodzigit, a gate with tudzigit, a gate yidzigit, a gate yidzigit, a gate wudzigit, a gate haswudzigit, a gate wududzigit. Okay. Next verb.
What are those two, the D plus L, or like in this case, D plus S? What is that called? What's that part of it called?
It's the classifier, and so we say the classifier is an S plus D classifier.
But I thought it was a 0. Oh, I'm looking at 0 event.
Yep. So yes, and so this is where it gets really interesting, is because you can have multiple zeros in there. We mark them just so that we know that there's a something there, right? And so in this case, what this marks in the parentheses is the conjugation class. 0, na, ga, ka. Every verb will belong to one of those 4 classes. So as we go through, here's a ga, here's a 0. And that ga is an upward action. That 0 is a default or something that comes to an end. Ka is a downward action. And then here's the 0. And this, okay.
So D plus S. I mean, there is a S classifier.
Mm-hmm.
The D plus part of the S.
It's in the S group, and the D component is activated. Somebody threw the D switch.
So that is actually showing here.
Yeah, so for some verbs, it's locked in there. It has to be.
Oh, okay.
And then all 0 classifiers that get de must be minus D, no matter what they were to begin with, right? All 0 classifiers with the 4th person de must be minus D. All the non-zeros, anything that's not in that 0 group, must be plus D. And then and that's why this one, it can't go minus D. You cannot go dusse or dusche or dusche, because it sounds like a cat. Maybe the last one sounded like no cats in those verbs. Okay, we got 2 more, and then we start doing our guessing game. You guys want to keep going? Once you start the guessing, it helps. I think once you start doing the fill in the blank part, it helps, because even when you're looking at these examples, there's still a couple of abstract concepts. So again, when we see this theme, there's an object, L. I think it should be Ausche. It is. It's an L classifier. It should be Tle, all the way down, except that fourth person, which has to be Gle. K'uts is closed, Na. That should be low, all the way down. K'uts, 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 k'uts. All that information is predictable. The problem, there's about 4 things you have to remember. Object, classifier, well, maybe 3. Conjugation, type, and then what that stem is. Those are your 4 things. Once you know how to code those into your mind, you can accurately predict any perfective verb of any theme that you look at, which is pretty wild, because then now you're moving past memorization, right? Because before you would just look it up and you'd have to say, okay, I got to just remember to say that. And now you're looking at this, and what's really interesting is there's thousands of these verbs, and birth speakers they just know this stuff. They know how to do that. And when you learn these rules as well, because then you'll see sometimes why you're being corrected, right? For the next one, there's no object. D plus L, I would expect woodle, and that's what I got. Open, na, long and low every time. Ku, 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 ku. This is the same verb as flooding. Flooding and puking are the same verb in Tlingit. So, you know, this is where chkut comes from, the name for chilkut. And an qashaku, the world flooded. Okay, so going down, like the parts are already there. Choshe, chotle, wutushe, wutudle, yishe, yidle, yishe, yidle, aushe, woodle, because there's no object, has aushe or has amshe, has woodle, wududle, wududle. And now the only thing that's really changing between these 2 examples is the consonant in the classifier and the stem, the root, right? You go from k'uts to ku. And so this is how you start to sort of figure this stuff out. And so, but it is a big step to move from memorizing these things and repeating them to looking at them and then just saying, now I could take a look at, and once I look up a verb, I can use it in the perfective. And once we do the future, you'll be able to do that as well. And then all you need is just a list. I mean, ideally, you just need a list of themes, right? And so your whole verb dictionary gets condensed down to this 50-pager with 1,000 verbs in it. Any questions?
Yeah. Why, I can't, now I'm trying to figure out the pattern here. Why are these 2 verbs together? This is object, subject, L classifier, stem. And then we have, the next one is no object, subject, L classifier with the plus in plus D plus the stem. Well, I mean, are these 2 related to each other, or are they just sort of sequentially, minorly changed?
This is what we're doing. We're going ya, de, se, ze, tle, tle, she, je. So I'm just grabbing verbs based on the classifier. There's no meaning that links them together. It's just to show you what the classifier does. That's what these examples do. Because, you know, chwa, chwete, chwase, chwetze, chwashe, chwetle, chwashe, chweje. Right, so the purpose of putting these verbs together is just to walk through the classifier. until we start getting this concept that, oh, when the classifier, I'm just changing this consonant right there, and I just remember what that consonant should be, and then the rest is the same. So when you look this up in the tables that Zeus puts out, which let me show you what those look like. So when he put his verbal structure handbook together, the one thing that he did with that, well, he did lots, but when you go down through a bunch of tables, so these are perfectives. So if we look at what this thing, so he's just showing you what the prefix looks like. Hua, watua, yi, or iga. Yi, wadua, wu, or uwa. And then don't worry about this because we're talking about positives. Don't worry about this because we're talking about positives. Don't worry about this, we're talking about positives. Hua, and this capital C means consonant. Huatle, huatle, huase, huadze, huashe, huadje. So if you're wondering what the prefix should be, you can look it up quickly on this table. But then that's why he puts this capital C there, because he's saying the only thing changing there is the consonant. And that's one of the big things. When we move from memorization to pattern building, it is a big step. It unlocks a lot of things, but it's a big step. Because I think before you would just memorize, but I think the human mind only has so many things it can memorize, and it needs to nest a system in there. And so the system, we're trying to figure out like a whole bunch of ways to get us there in terms of talking about how that system works.
So since that is a consonant and I,
Mm-hmm.
that in SH, S, and L classifiers, right?
It's every non-zero.
Okay. All right.
It's everything except for ya. So again, ya is kind of the outlier, right? Which is kind of interesting for Tlingit. All of these di, si, zi, tle, tle, shi, ji. It must be one of those for the perfective, or ya. But ya throws the system kind of out of whack, which is the default, which is weird.
I'll believe you. I believe you.
No lying about it. Okay. Object in both of these. We should expect ausha and auja, and that's what we get. We have SH and SH plus D, so we should expect sh and j, and that's what we get, sh, j, all the way down. Closed, but we have ga and zero. So we should expect long and low, short and high. That is also what we get all the way down. So we're moving into the business of predicting. And then and it takes a little while, but once you internalize this stuff, then once you see a verb, you'll know how, and then it becomes a question of looking up that verb theme, internalizing that theme so you know how to use it. And when we get to the future, it's way easier than this. There's fewer things to memorize in the future, right? But for Tlingit, like this is when we want to cross into that threshold of just blowing up the number of verbs that we learn. I do think that this is a part of it. And you don't have to understand like all the terminology, but the mechanics of it, right? So knowing what those things should do. And again, I just keep coming back to like just the genius of our ancestors and the ability of people to commit all of this information to memory. But when we move into predictions, it does start to flow together quite a bit. Okay, so khwashik an, watushik an. Oh, these are hating, right? Now we're all hating. Yishik-an, yishik-an, aushik-an, hus-aushik-an, wadujik-an. Okay, so it changes to j. Chwajakuch, watujakuch, yijakuch, yijakuch, aujakuch, hus-aujakuch, wadujikuch. So we'll do one set of examples and we'll probably wrap it up for tonight. Okay. So given all that information now, you now know how to read a verb theme. Somebody walk me through this theme with these important parts, how those play a role in predicting what this verb is gonna look like and sound like. There are 4 things I needed to look at.
There's an object.
There's an object. So I should have awa, hus awa. Okay.
There's a subject.
There's a subject, but we're gonna change that subject, and so that one's not one of the 4 that we're really looking for.
0 classifier.
0 classifier. So this is gonna be ya all the way in. The next 2 are tied together.
It's a 0, so it's going to be short and high.
Yes, it's 0 and closed.
Oh.
It would be all the way down. Now we know all the components, so we should be able to accurately predict. And if you've already guessed one, hold off and let someone else guess one. Or predict it. I should stop saying guess, because you were predicting. I heard it. That would be I listened to it, because it's the S classifier, right? We've got a 0.
Oh, the S is for subject. Okay.
Yes, yes, good. Yeah, so capital S, lowercase s. Yeah, it's tricky.
Hua'ach.
Hua'ach. I heard it. We heard it.
Hus awa ach.
That would be they heard them, or she heard them, or they heard her. But the we part, we're to.
Utua'ach.
Yeah, watua'ach. You heard it.
Awa'ach.
Awa'ach would be she or he heard it, but it's very close to that.
Yiach.
Iya'ach. When you get this 0, then it should probably be iya. Otherwise, it's going to be ye. It's just one more. It's like you learn how to play cribbage. I'm like, nope, that's 6 points for me. This because it's a 3 on a Tuesday, right? Whatever. Y'all heard it.
Yiya'ach.
Yi'ach.
Yiya'ach. Oh, there's no
Singular, they heard it. She or he. Or it.
awa'ach.
Awa'ach. They heard it.
Hus awa'ach.
Has awa'ach. But you can't go a whole bunch in a row. You gotta let other people go. Sheesh.
You kept winning the animal thing.
It was heard. I'm sorry. Dua'ach. See, so we're getting it, right? And so all the information, like, I think your brain is like, no, too much. But once you start putting it into practice, like we're going to get all these. We're going to get them. We're going to do 2 sets for every classifier. So here's where the magic comes in. This is 0 as well. This has an object as well. This is a 0 conjugation. Everything will be exactly the same, except for instead of we should have in. There's the answer key right there. I picked berries into a container.
Ha'in.
In. It's gotta be short. It's gotta be short. We picked berries.
Utua in.
You picked berries.
in.
Y'all picked berries.
in.
She or he picked berries.
Awa in.
They picked berries.
Hasawa in.
Berries were picked.
What do a in?
What do it in? Yeah, well.
The bonus one, who the hell picked my berries?
Goodness cheese, Shuhan, Wook Echa, Achtu Klekayikach. One Collins Chay again Kitli Ayashin gets to the two, a wooch in Aya, Kakusahantin, ye Jagachtune, Aka away ye gachtu lock the Katuhan. Perfective idat aka future, aka chuoya katicha ejide yegachtu ti aya. Ya ade hastu nuku ya hatagu konkian. Jasa yukatangi tin aya chay ginki akachtu saku. Ye away Johan. Ye jinaine ya ha yukatangi tin. So Wednesday, we'll start our conversation in Tlingit, talking about the flood, migrations, big, scary, supernatural types of things. We'll do that for a bit. Then we're going to try and finish the perfective. Well, I'm going to get all the way through it, because then I'll give you the handout on the perfective, which it has all the answers. So don't go looking up the answers yet. But if you want to go find that chapter, you can. But maybe for now, like just focus on putting your things together that you can say about the Great Flood, about migrations, or about supernatural things. And then we'll finish this perfective. And again, it's something you'll just keep practicing. Because the other thing too is you look something up. If that verb, if it's in the perfective, like if you look in the verb dictionary and you find something in the perfective that's short and high, you should automatically know it's a 0 conjugation. You can, that's the perfective could tell you if it's 0 or not, but it can't tell you about the other, whether it's a na, ga, or ka. Okay. Ganesh chi shuhan, yigoayach kwan.
Are you going to put this slideshow in the online with our recording, right?
It's already up there somewhere, but
that's okay. I can wait.
Review it, but I'll certainly post it after Wednesday. Because I don't want you to go look at all the answers, because I want you to put it together as we go.
I have to say this is the very first time you've put that switchboard slide up there. And I didn't want to vomit. It must be the 3rd year I've seen it. And I think I'm finally ready to just calm down and look at it and believe that it's got answers in it.
Neither the flood nor the vomit is coming. We're just gonna just mash up some verbs. That's all we're gonna do. Okay. Ushekach steen, Johan. Ganesh chi shek echawe.
Yagen.
Yeah.